Thank you, Edgeworth. And now on with the video. Outcome Memories is a Sonic EXE multiplayer survival horror game released for the public in July 25, 2025 and acts as the answer to Sonic EXE the disaster after that game got removed. Despite the game being on Roblox, it still was a success and has quite the popularity amongst fans with a 90% like ratio, over 370,000 favorites and 178.3 million visits. Now you probably have been wondering, are you or your buddies ever going to record gameplay footage of Outcome Memories? And to answer that question,
no.
And just to avoid making this a really short video, I'm going to state why me and my buddies are not going to record any gameplay footage of Outcome Memories. We did not like playing the game. We played like 2 rounds before agreeing that it wasn't that good, before we stopped playing altogether. The game sounds like it should work on paper. Really good looking game. Has a clean presentation and well designed HUD that doesn't clutter the screen. Has great music, even though the voice clips get repetitive. But where it falls apart is the gameplay. Now I won't bust out a spreadsheet to min-max this into oblivion. I have simplified it into 3 points and decided to go into detail about each one and why the gameplay fell apart. Also, one more thing before I start. Sleepyiceman6472 decided to collab with me to help make this video, so he will provide some of the voice work throughout the video. So, if you hear a different Microsoft Sam voice, then that's probably why. Alright, enough rambling. On with the video.
Of course, with it being a Sonic EXE game, you got to have some survivors in play, otherwise it would just be unfair, where the executioners have nothing to do but fight each other. The game features 7 survivors that you can play, as with Sonic, as one of them, but only one person can be that survivor at a time, so you can't have any duplicates. However, it does not matter who you pick, because the roster's balance is not good. Tails and Knuckles are acceptable, I guess, but the rest of the roster is just imbalanced. For starters, Sonic doesn't seem too bad, as his peel-out has a 3-second charge up before blasting off at higher speeds to get away from the executioner, but his dodge ability can be a nuisance to deal with if he's good with drop dash, and said drop dash can be combined into a character I will talk about later. Eggman also isn't too bad, because his double jump isn't really that busted and he shares the same passive as Tails, which cannot stack to prevent Metal Sonic from healing really fast. But his shield basically works as a counter that he can use without losing speed and can deploy at any time. Afterward, he can just escape with the jetpack boost before you can even do anything against him. And since he can deploy the shield whenever he wants, you could get stunned because of a shield you could not predict he would use until it was too late. But then come the last 3 characters I didn't mention yet, those being Amy, Cream, and Metal Sonic. Amy doesn't sound all that bad at first, as none of her abilities sound busted, and in all fairness, none of them are overpowered. Her passive, however, is where the problems are. At the start of the match, she randomly draws 2 tarot cards from a pack of 6, and the ones I highlighted are the ones you see most players use. That doesn't sound so bad at first glance, but what if I told you she can re-roll them every 15 seconds? This means she can run away much quicker, and once she escapes or the executioner goes after someone else, she can just passively heal 75% of her health before getting ready to stun again. And even if she doesn't get those 2 cards, she can just re-roll her
stack of cards
when she is safe, until she gets them, meaning if she gets lucky, the executioner stands little to no chance. Metal Sonic, however, is on the opposite end of the spectrum than Amy. 2 of his passives don't sound like they would snap the game in half, but his abilities do. The rocket charge is easily the biggest offender, as it seems like another version of Sonic's peel-out ability, but if he hits the executioner, he can stun them regardless if he hits a wall. Sure, he takes self-damage if the charge connects, but that barely matters, because he can just escape and self-repair himself up to 150 health. Oh yeah, and did I mention that he has more health than everyone else? This means his 50% damage resistance combined with his 175 max HP basically turn him into more of a tank than he needs to be. Now remember, when I said that Sonic's drop dash can combo into another character? Yeah, he can hit the executioner up to 3 times with the drop dash, which adds up to 5 seconds worth of stun time. And since stun time stacks, this means you can be stunned for additional time, which buys Metal a chance to self-repair while you can't move. Knuckles can also combo with his abilities, but while it is annoying, he isn't as busted because he moves way slower while charging a punch alongside going into a stance, which makes it easy to tell when to stay away from him. His counter also has a better tell, since he stops moving when he uses it. And then there's Cream the Rabbit. I don't know if the developers have beef with her, but they did the rabbit dirty. Which sucks, because I am actually a fan of her design, as it feels unique. And her glide and heal abilities feel like fine inclusions, as her glide allows her to safely descend down at the cost of not being able to ascend, and the heal makes her a great support character, if you know how to use it. But since Cream is basically the medic of the team, you want to get away quickly when you start getting chased. But you can't. All she gets in terms of movement is a dash that barely goes anywhere and hurts you if it hits anything. Granted, she only loses 2 HP if she hits something, and it can cause knockback alongside giving a speed boost, but since the knockback is so pathetic and the speed boost lasts all of 4 seconds, it doesn't make up for the shortcomings. And while it is cute that Cheese follows her, she is tied towards Gamma Play, since she doubles Cream's healing but dies once Cream's health reaches 30 or less, which in of itself is not good game design. Which basically means, if nobody defends Cream, then she will likely get steamrolled first, since her dash is so ineffective that escape is near impossible. I'm not saying Cream has to have an ability that stuns the Executioner, because to be honest, a medic that can add time to how long the Executioner is stunned for would be kind of overpowered. But I'm saying Cream needs a better ability for moving around and escaping the Executioner. And given how universally hated the 0.2 update is right now, I'm not holding out hope for the game to properly rebalance the roster.
Right, so the survivors are unbalanced, but what about the very thing trying to take them out? Well, unlike the survivors, which had problems strung about most of them, this issue is self-contained to 2011X and therefore is a lot easier to comprehend and explain. Eggmaster Plan made a great video breaking it down, but I'll simplify it into something that my brain is happy with. X is faster than the survivors, has a basic attack that is pretty self-explanatory, and has a charge attack which can grab and damage the survivor while held, if it lands, but can't turn while using it. So far so normal. But where the problems rear their heads around the corner is God's trickery, which makes him teleport to a random survivor and send 3 clones after some of them with their own way to dodge them. If they are blue, you need to cease input, orange you need to keep moving, and black means you have to jump over them or your controls are inverted. That sounds fine, but it can happen to anyone, and sometimes it can be obstructed or somewhere you can't see, meaning you could get a cheap hit from a clone you couldn't see or know was after you, until they had already run into you. Then there's invisibility, which makes X turn invisible and allows him to teleport to a survivor, if he's close enough. That sounds fine, but what isn't is that it goes on cooldown for 10 seconds. I don't know about you, but 10 seconds is way too little for an ability that makes it so nobody can see you, meaning X can just spam the move, if he so chooses. You could argue that the cooldown timer doesn't start until X becomes visible again, which sounds fair, until you take into consideration how small the maps are despite there being 4 of them. This basically makes it so X can just go invisible when nobody's looking and then ambush someone without any warning. And when that happens, there's very little you can do to stop it. Granted, you could argue that's what the stun moves are for with the survivors, but stunning him also makes him angry, since it fills up a rage meter. And once it's full, he can unleash rage mode, which makes him powerful, and while it disables God's trickery and makes invisibility reveal every survivor to his whereabouts at the cost of making him unable to move, it's only strung with more problems, which we'll get to later on. X also heavily relies on targeting, meaning that he basically just locks onto a survivor and goes after them. And if the player controlling him is really good, then the survivors don't stand a chance, which basically makes tunneling the Executioner the only viable strategy. But no matter what side you are on, tunneling is not a very fun strategy. While X is getting a remodel with his mob asset reworked. As you saw earlier, the 0.2 update is mostly hated on due to the overpowered Executioners. The new levels having issues with hitboxes and a large amount of bugs. So I don't think that helps its case.
Now given how much we talked about the characters, and how the balance is mostly thrown out the window, you could still find some fun in this game. However, this last part is basically a nail in the coffin. Now this is normal for these types of games where, when you die or lose, as the survivor you basically have to sit there and wait for the round to end with little to nothing to keep yourself entertained, but you also want to keep players from getting bored. For this game in particular, the survivors have to survive 4 minutes and 40 seconds for the green rings to spawn before you can escape. Sounds like an acceptable amount of time, but every kill adds 15 seconds to the timer. Again, that sounds normal, but considering how quickly the survivors can die to exit makes those added 15 seconds more of a nuisance. You could argue that Banana Eats did a similar thing with it, adding 15 seconds when the banana got a kill, and in that one you had to survive for 5 minutes. But the thing is, in that game the survivors could reduce the time by completing puzzles, and spectating in that game was optional if you wanted to mess around in the lobby. Outcome Memories, however, has nothing like that. You're forced to sit there watching other people play until the match ends, meaning a single player dying could make you wait for longer. This is in stark contrast to the game's inspiration, where in that one, if someone died no extra time was added. And if that didn't waste enough of your time, then how about when X goes into a rage mode, it freezes the timer and disables the green rings? This basically means X can stall the match by going into a rage mode, which forces you to possibly wait longer for the match to end, because the timer pauses when X gets angry. Sure, X can only use it once per match and it's disabled when a solo occurs, but it can still drive up the patience of anyone waiting to join in a game. Oh yeah, I should also mention that when there's only one survivor left, the game activates a solo mechanic, where the last remaining survivor is healed 65 HP and gets a 50% damage resistance alongside some other buffs exclusive to them. The game also plays that character's theme, and each one has their own track, which sounds like a good addition to make it so if one survivor is left, then they aren't totally screwed over. But what if I told you that if this happens, then the timer can be extended to the theme of the solo survivor for up to 4 minutes? This means that if there is only one survivor left, then the match can last even longer than it needs to be, which in turn can make the players waiting for the next round start getting impatient. Granted, the green rings don't deactivate when this happens, so it isn't that big of a deal if it happens during the last 80 seconds, but that occurrence is so rare that it might as well not exist. But even when the round ends, the relief of starting a new one is basically shot in the foot in the form of the results screen. After every round you get a cutscene showing monitors of the survivors, which shows who escaped and who didn't, alongside another cutscene if specific conditions are met. And truth be told, it's actually pretty cool to see the first few times you see it. But you want to know what happens after those first few times? You want to skip it. You can't. You're forced to sit there and watch the game show off all the cutscenes and tally up your results before you get your rank and can join the next round. Oh yeah, this game also has a ranking system that determines how many rings you get. And it's incredibly unforgiving to the point people have talked about it. I could get behind that, but where I draw the line is when it starts to mock you, because if you get a rank lower than C, the game straight up pokes fun at you, even if you got destroyed by a really good EXE player. And there's no way to turn this off or skip it, meaning if you end up in a server with someone that can just destroy the survivor team really easily, then getting mocked is going to happen a lot, to the point where you might just quit the game altogether.
So that's everything I have to say about why me and my buddies are not going to record anything for Outcome Memories. The game's balancing with survivors and the executioner is very bad, to the point that it's basically a joke, and the game forces you to waste too much time before it lets you join another match. It's a real shame that me and my buddies didn't like this game, because there is potential for a good game in there. It's just not fun to play no matter who you play as. We also will not be taking any requests for Outcome Memories, because we don't want to play that game and the game left a bitter taste on us after playing it. No amount of updates are going to change that. Please do not harass the developers of Outcome Memories. Just because 4 people don't like the game doesn't mean it gives you the right to go out of your way to harass the developers of the game. Anyway, I got to go now. Thanks for watching.